Welcome, the chosen ones. The time has come for you to step into the fullness of your purpose. For heaven doesn't whisper warnings, it declares its will with unshakable authority. When God speaks, it's not a subtle shift. The very atmosphere changes, rearranging itself to align with divine intent. And right now, whether you feel prepared or not, this shift has already begun. Judgment is no longer approaching, it's here. It has stepped into the room, claimed its seat, and started calling names, like a divine roll call no one wants to hear. Before we dive deeper, let's acknowledge something many overlook. Psychologists have found that when someone lives in deception long enough, their mind eventually believes its own lies. Now, consider the danger when those very people, trapped in their delusion, form alliances, cliques, or spiritual cults, convinced they can outmaneuver God. This isn't just a thought to ponder, it's a stark reality. And trust me, watching this unfold is like clutching your popcorn for the inevitable. But make no mistake, this is not the dramatic, lightning strike judgment scene you might envision. There won't be thunder booming or the earth splitting open for mass repentance. Instead, God allows the wicked to trip over the very traps they set for you. Then he watches silently as they try to convince themselves that the ground didn't just swallow their plans whole. It's poetry in motion, it's divine timing. And yes, it's sometimes quite amusing when those who plotted against you actually believed that God would rearrange his schedule to honor their foolishness. This season is different from anything you've known. Heaven is not drawing a simple circle of protection around you, this is a circle of authority. And with that divine authority, everything outside of it starts to malfunction. Those who once seemed organized can no longer even coordinate their own shadows. The alliances they built fall apart as they start to argue with their own lies. The schemers forget their own scripts. The gossipers start confessing their secrets, often by accident. What they once hid in darkness collapses under the weight of God's light, and it's impossible for them to hide from it. Meanwhile, you, the one they counted out, the one they targeted, the one they underestimated, are stepping into momentum so strong that it cannot be interrupted. They threw everything at you, but they forgot to factor in logic. And now, the same God they mocked is rewriting the entire story, turning it in your favor. Judgment has already begun, and the wicked are being exposed for all their falsehoods. The cults they built are unraveling, and as that happens, you times are stepping into an unstoppable rise that even heaven is applauding. Meanwhile, your enemies suddenly find themselves distracted with things that feel far more urgent than their petty schemes. This isn't the start of your comeback, this is the unveiling of what has already been written for you. And believe me, God didn't write your story to end with you defeated. No, he wrote it to end with them, confused, convicted, and utterly incapable of stopping you. Now, let's talk about the most profound revelation of all. God didn't just expose the wickedness of your enemies, he exposed their dependency on you. That's right. The truth that many chosen ones don't realize right away is that the exposure happening right now isn't simply about revealing who gossiped about you or who plotted against you. The real sting, the deeper revelation, is that God has exposed just how much these individuals relied on the very person they tried to destroy. For years, they acted like you were insignificant, like your presence didn't matter, like your words were small, and like your gifts were nothing special. But the moment the curtain was pulled back, the truth became undeniable. They were feeding off your energy, your kindness, your ideas, your strength, and your resilience all along. They were siphoning from you, hoping you wouldn't notice the withdrawals happening right under your nose. And here's the kicker. It wasn't drama or chaos that exposed them, it was your absence. When you began to detach, when you outgrew them, when you healed and set boundaries, their entire system began to crack. They couldn't function without your energy. They couldn't produce without your strength. They couldn't perform without the power they were secretly draining from you. And now, that's all exposed. This isn't just about judgment on them, it's about your worth being revealed. And that, my friends, is the reason you cannot be stopped. You see, their judgment began the moment you stopped explaining yourself. There's a pivotal moment in every chosen one's life when something shifts, not with a loud declaration, but with a quiet finality that even heaven takes note of. That moment is when you stop breaking down your intentions for people who twist them. It's when you stop defending your character to those who have made up their minds about you. It's when you stop giving access to people who never truly valued your presence. This shift is not just emotional, it's spiritual. In the spiritual realm, it is recorded as the moment of separation. You stop allowing others to have access to your energy, and in doing so, God steps in to take over. People may not realize the weight of that moment, but it is deeply significant. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. It was a sign of your growth. It was proof that you had reached a place where their manipulation, their gaslighting, their subtle attempts to control you no longer had power over you. This moment of silence is sacred. It's when you step into your power and let the divine take over. And as you do, everything shifts. Their games no longer have control over your energy, and the reality you're stepping into is one that no one can take away. The very fact that you stopped explaining yourself is a spiritual act of rebellion against the forces that tried to bind you. It's the moment you stop giving them the keys to your peace, and you allow the divine to take charge of the rest. The truth is, you were never meant to explain yourself to those who could never understand you. This season is about stepping into your power, knowing your worth, and allowing the universe to reveal the truth that has always been written in your favor. And as your enemies continue to scramble, you will rise unstoppable, unshaken, and ready for everything that's coming next. God honors moments like these, where the silence of surrender becomes a powerful act of faith. When He sees you no longer entertaining the behavior of those who sought to harm you, He begins holding them accountable for everything they thought they could get away with. Their judgment doesn't arrive because you fought back. No, it comes the moment you stop playing their game. Once you ceased explaining yourself, their masks fell, and their true nature was laid bare. Without your words to twist and manipulate, their intentions were exposed, and their downfall began the moment you made peace with yourself, refusing to let them control your narrative any longer. The truth is, the cult didn't fear your gift, they feared losing control over you, the one who carries it. People often assume the envy and resistance you faced were all about your talents, your intelligence, or your spiritual sensitivity. But the deeper truth is far more revealing. What truly rattled them was the possibility that one day you might realize you didn't need their approval, their validation, or their system to operate at your fullest capacity. Their fear was never your ability, it was your independence. The moment you step into full awareness of your own value, everything shifts. When you recognize your strength, you no longer chase after people who thrive off your confusion. When you understand your calling, you stop allowing others to dictate your path. And when you awaken to the depth of your power, you stop tolerating environments that seek to diminish you. This is what terrified them. The day you could no longer be controlled, when they realized they no longer had influence over what you thought, what you believed, or which direction you chose to move in. Their unity was never about solidarity, it was built on the shared fear of losing their grip on you. They saw something in you that you hadn't fully realized yet, a strength that didn't depend on them, a light that didn't require their approval, and a destiny that couldn't be rewritten by their opinions. Once they recognized they had no real power over your identity, they panicked. They tried to keep you doubting yourself, to make you question your worth and your abilities. They worked tirelessly to keep you emotionally and mentally tied to them. Their entire goal was to control your perception of yourself, because they knew that a self-assured chosen one is unstoppable. If they could keep you second-guessing, then they could control everything. That's why they manipulated, isolated, gossiped, and tried to make you feel powerless without them. It wasn't hatred, it was fear, disguised as hostility. But when God exposed them, He didn't just reveal their wickedness, he exposed their dependence on you. He unveiled just how much energy they had invested in keeping you unaware of your own greatness. And once you broke free from their grip, their whole structure began to collapse. Not because you fought back, but because you were the foundation holding up their false sense of power. The truth is simple. They never feared your gift. They feared the day you realized that your gift was yours, not theirs to control. They feared your awakening more than anything. The greatest threat to them was never your downfall, it was your realization of your own power. They didn't need to destroy you physically, they needed you to remain confused, hesitant, and disconnected from your true identity. The moment you woke up to who you really are, everything changed. Their influence lost its power, and the veil lifted from your eyes. Once you knew your worth, they lost their grip over you, and God allowed their attacks for a reason. One of the hardest truths to accept for anyone on this journey is that sometimes God allows the wicked to act openly and boldly, without immediate consequences. Not because He favors them or has forgotten you, but because He is building a public record. Every move they made, every lie they told, every attempt to sabotage you, these were all documented. God allowed them to expose themselves because He knew that when judgment arrived, it would be precise, irrefutable, and based on undeniable evidence. Heaven doesn't rule on rumors, assumptions, or whispers. It operates on solid, undeniable truth, and the wicked gave God all the material He needed to build a case against them. Every moment you held your peace, every time you refrained from retaliation, it was a testament to your integrity. While they were busy digging their own hole, you were busy growing. Your patience, your resilience, and your silence became evidence in your favor. The contrast between your heart and their actions became so stark that no one could deny it anymore. And when judgment comes, it is never random. It is always just, precise, and undeniable. The reason some of their attacks were allowed to continue longer than you expected is because God wasn't collecting information. He was allowing them to reveal their true nature. He let them lie, gossip, and plot because He wanted them to expose their own motives. If He had intervened too early, they would have claimed innocence or misunderstood intentions. But by giving them room to act, He allowed them to show the world exactly who they were. They didn't realize that every move they made, every act of hostility, was only adding to their downfall. They didn't write your story, they wrote their own sentencing. And now, it's time for them to face the consequences. And finally, the reason they couldn't defeat you wasn't because of their strength, it was because they couldn't handle your awakening. They feared the day you would realize how powerful you truly are and how little you needed them to validate your worth. They worked tirelessly to keep you in a state of confusion, but now the truth is clear. You know who you are, and you know your power. They can no longer control your narrative because the moment you recognized your worth, their influence evaporated. This is not just about their judgment, it's about your rise. It's about you stepping into the fullness of your power and realizing that everything they tried to do was simply to keep you asleep. But you've woken up, and now nothing can stop you. The power they thought they had over you was nothing but an illusion, and now that illusion is shattering. You are stepping into the life you were always meant to live, and nothing can stand in your way. The war you fought wasn't won the moment your enemies stopped attacking, it was won the moment you stopped doubting yourself. Their entire system of control was built on your lack of awareness, and the instant you stepped into your own clarity, everything they had built began to crumble. They still haven't accepted it, but the truth is simple. They never had real power over you. Their power was only over the version of you that didn't know who you were. When you embraced your true self, you removed the hold they had on you, and their empire of manipulation collapsed before your very eyes. And make no mistake, judgment isn't about revenge, it's about restoring what was blocked by their hands. The delays, the setbacks, the moments of seeming silence in your life, those were never signs that God had forgotten you or was withholding your blessings. No, the truth is far simpler and far more revealing. The blessings meant for you were deliberately tampered with by those who feared your rise. These were individuals who were spiritually, emotionally, and morally bankrupt, believing that if they could block your path, they would somehow elevate themselves or secure their place ahead of you. But here's the divine twist. Every time they stepped in front of something God sent your way, be it an opportunity, a connection, or a breakthrough, they weren't preventing your blessing. They were simply holding it in place. Blessings assigned to you by the universe do not disappear. They don't get cancelled. They don't get taken away. They stack. They wait. And when the time is right, when the dam is ready to break, God releases everything that has been held back. And no one, not them, not anyone, can stop it. This is the true face of judgment in your life. It's not about God striking them down. It's about God rerouting everything they tried to block. It's about restoring the flow that was once stopped by their insecurity and their interference. It's about releasing everything that piled up while they were busy meddling with what was never theirs to touch. The truth is, their interference didn't change your destiny. It only created a backlog of blessings that now have no choice but to overtake you. This is why your next season feels so intense. The momentum is unstoppable. The shift is undeniable. You're no longer receiving blessings one at a time. You're receiving waves of what's been held back for years. Every lie they told, every door they tried to close, every connection they tried to sabotage only added pressure behind the spiritual dam. And now, God has decided the time is up. Every wall they built must break. Judgment isn't about getting back at them, it's about giving back to you. It's God restoring everything that was tampered with, making sure you receive your blessings with interest. The same hands that tried to block your flow are now the very reason why your blessings are pouring in all at once. God didn't forget you, He was preparing a release that no one could ever stop. And here's the powerful truth. God allowed their attacks not because He wanted you to suffer, but because He needed you to learn something no one can teach you from a book or a sermon. Some lessons can only be learned through experience, by walking through the darkest, most draining environments and relationships, by surviving situations you never expected to face. This wasn't punishment, it wasn't abandonment, it was spiritual training, raw, unfiltered, spiritual training that was necessary for your growth. God needed you to understand the architecture of evil from the inside out. While most people only recognize manipulation, betrayal, and deception when they've fully manifested, you were trained to see it in its earliest stages. You learned how small seeds of deception grow into full-blown manipulation. You learned how control camouflages itself as guidance, how envy masquerades as concern, and how wicked people often present themselves as the most charming individuals in the room. This wasn't knowledge gained through theory, it was wisdom gained from surviving these experiences firsthand. You learned to pay attention to the smallest details. The tone of voice, the timing of words, the silence that speaks volumes, the inconsistencies that others overlook. You became fluent in a language most people don't even know exists, the language of hidden agendas and dishonest intentions. You began to recognize the patterns of deceit before they fully materialized. You can now sense a trap long before it's set, and you can see danger coming from miles away. This is why your discernment has become so advanced. This is why people can't fool you anymore. This is why manipulation no longer works on you. God allowed you to walk through their darkness so that you could learn to recognize the structure of evil. Now that you've learned this architecture, wicked people no longer have an advantage over you. They can't surprise you because you've already seen the blueprint. They can't confuse you because you understand the layout. They can't trap you because you've walked through enough darkness to know where the exits are, where the shadows are, and where the hidden doors are. Your spiritual training has made you stronger, wiser, and more prepared than they could ever imagine. What they didn't realize is that their greatest fear wasn't your destruction, it was your awakening. They never needed you gone, they needed you confused, hesitant, and disconnected from your true power. They feared the day you would realize that you didn't need them to define your worth or to guide your path. And that day has arrived. The moment you woke up to who you truly are, everything shifted. Their influence over you evaporated because you no longer needed their approval. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit their expectations. You began to stand in the fullness of your power, and now nothing can hold you back. Their manipulation has lost its grip. Their lies no longer have a hold on your heart. You are stepping into a new season, one where your identity is fully in alignment with your true self. You know your worth, and you know your power. The moment you realize that, they lost. The veil was lifted, and the truth about who you are became undeniable. You've walked through their darkness and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. Now, it's your time to rise. Your journey was never about enduring suffering, it was about mastering the challenges that came your way. And now that you've learned to navigate the very architecture of evil, you are stepping into a season where deception holds no power over you. The chains that once tried to bind your spirit have been broken, and you've become a force that no longer succumbs to manipulation. Your awakening isn't just about overcoming adversity, it's about rising above it with strength, resilience, and wisdom. They tried to break your spirit because they couldn't break your assignment. They assumed that by shattering your confidence, they could sever you from your destiny. But what they failed to understand is that your mission was never tied to your emotions. It wasn't about your feelings or fleeting moments of doubt, it was about your existence. You weren't called to this path, you were born for it. Your assignment was ingrained into your being, making you a force to be reckoned with, even on your hardest days. Even when you felt drained, you were still chosen. Even when you questioned everything, heaven never questioned you. Your enemies miscalculated everything about you. They assumed your spirit was fragile, insecure, and dependent on validation. But what they couldn't see was that your spirit was made of something far stronger. It's a spirit built for endurance, coded with resilience they couldn't comprehend. Your spirit is a blueprint they'll never be able to decode, no matter how hard they tried. And that's why their attacks were doomed to fail. They didn't fail because you were invincible, they failed because your assignment was invincible. You weren't covered by divine protection because you were perfect. You were covered because you had a purpose that no force could ever touch. They targeted your confidence because they couldn't reach your covenant. They tried to disrupt your peace because they couldn't touch the work you were destined to do. Every time they sought to break you, they only activated more of your calling. Every insult was a reset button for your spirit. Every betrayal sharpened your discernment, helping you grow stronger. Every loss brought you deeper into alignment with your purpose. They thought they were damaging you, but they were actually confirming that you were chosen. And when God judged them, it wasn't for disliking you. It was for attempting to obstruct a divine assignment that they had no authority to interfere with. Your enemies didn't suffer because of their opinions, they were judged for their obstruction. They tried to tamper with the divine timeline, to block what heaven had already signed off on, and in doing so, they sealed their own fate. Their attacks didn't weaken your destiny, they exposed their own weakness. Their cruel schemes awakened your clarity, and their manipulation only strengthened your resolve. What they didn't realize was that with every attempt to break you, they were helping you evolve. Your spirit didn't break, it transformed, grew sharper, more determined, and more powerful. You are no longer the person they tried to break. You are the person who rose when heaven intervened. And now, that version of you is unstoppable. Judgment was triggered when you finally outgrew the version of yourself they could manipulate. Judgment didn't arrive because you cried, nor because you suffered. No. Judgment arrived the moment you elevated, when you rose above your wounds, your fears, and your old limiting beliefs. Everything shifted. They never feared your success, they feared the day you would no longer need them to validate you. They feared the day when you stopped allowing them to control your perception. When you finally recognized your worth, they lost their grip on you. Their power wasn't in your defeat, it was in your confusion, your doubt. But once your perception of yourself expanded, their influence over you evaporated. They didn't fear your downfall, they feared your awakening. Spiritual evolution destroys manipulation. As you evolved, their tactics became useless. The spiritual hooks they used to destabilize you no longer had any effect. What used to trigger you now bores you. What used to intimidate you now exposes their weakness. What used to confuse you now reveals their true motives with terrifying clarity. Your healing severed their access, your growth shut down their manipulative strategies, and your elevation disabled their spiritual tactics. Judgment wasn't just a consequence of their actions, it was a declaration from heaven that you had ascended beyond their reach. They tried to return, but they weren't revisiting the past, they were trespassing. They tried to access an outdated version of you that no longer existed, and heaven deemed that a violation. What they didn't realize is that the power they thought they had was nothing but an illusion. Their strength was never real, it was simply a performance, relying on you to stay asleep. What they thought was influence was nothing more than insecurity masked by numbers and coordination. What appeared to be spiritual dominance was nothing but intimidation, fueled by secrecy and fear. The moment you woke up, everything they had built began to unravel. The curtain was pulled back, and their false power was exposed. They didn't fear being exposed by outsiders, they feared being exposed by times you asterisk. You were the only one who could see through their carefully constructed facade, decode their intentions, and dismantle their strategies without lifting a finger. The moment your awareness rose, their power became transparent. You weren't just awakened, you became a force of truth, one that no longer accepts manipulation, deceit, or control. You are now the living proof that deception and insecurity cannot withstand the light of awareness. The truth is, your awakening was the death of their control. It was never about them fearing your downfall, it was about them fearing your rise. They feared the day you realized the strength that lay dormant within you, the moment you fully stepped into your power. And now that you've awoken, nothing can hold you back. You are no longer the person they tried to break. You are the person heaven always intended you to be. And that version of you is a force that cannot be stopped. The true essence of your journey was never about enduring suffering, it was about mastering your own power and potential. And now that you've unlocked the secrets of how darkness operates, you're stepping into a season where deception holds no sway over you. The forces that tried to manipulate you, mislead you, and strip you of your essence are powerless in the face of your awakened spirit. Their tactics have lost their edge because you no longer participate in their game. You've broken free from the chains they used to keep you bound, and now their false authority has no place in your life. They tried to break your spirit because they couldn't break your assignment. They believed that if they could shatter your confidence, they could sever your connection to your destiny. But they never understood that your assignment was not just a calling, it was your very existence. You were not called to this purpose, you were born for it. Your assignment is tied to the core of who you are, and no external force can alter that. Even on your worst days, when you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, you are still a force to be reckoned with. Even when you doubt, heaven never questions you. Your enemies misjudged your wiring. They assumed your spirit was fragile and needy, dependent on validation and easily swayed by external opinions. But what they failed to see was the true power that lies within you. Your spirit was designed to endure, to rise, to resist. It carries strength they can't fathom. Your resilience is something they cannot replicate, and your endurance is something they can never understand. They were trying to manipulate something they never truly understood, a force that cannot be controlled, only channeled. This is why their attacks failed. It wasn't because you were untouchable, it was because your purpose, your assignment, is untouchable. They targeted your confidence because they couldn't touch your covenant with God. They attacked your peace because they couldn't interrupt the work you were destined to do. Every time they tried to break you, they only strengthened your resolve. Every insult they hurled at you acted as a catalyst for your growth. Every betrayal deepened your discernment. Every challenge you faced only aligned you further with your divine purpose. They thought they were damaging you, but they were only confirming your strength. They thought they could stop you, but every attempt they made only activated more of your calling. When God judged them, He didn't do so because of their disdain for you. He judged them for daring to interfere with something He had ordained. They tried to block what heaven had set in motion. They tried to disrupt the divine flow of your destiny. And now judgment has fallen. But it's not about punishment, it's about the revelation that everything they built on lies and manipulation is crumbling. They didn't just attack you, they tried to obstruct the divine plan for your life. And that is where they went wrong. And when you reached the point where you stopped explaining yourself, that's when judgment was triggered. Judgment didn't fall because you cried or because you were mistreated. It fell the moment you elevated, the moment you rose above the person they tried to manipulate. The moment you realized that you no longer needed to seek validation from those who never truly understood you, that's when the shift happened. They weren't afraid of your success, they were terrified of your self-awareness. They feared the day you realized that you didn't need them to define your identity. When you stepped into that realization, their power over you evaporated, and judgment followed naturally. The spiritual manipulation they used on you no longer works because you've evolved. Their tactics, which once held you back, now only expose their true intentions. What used to confuse you now illuminates their agendas. The tricks they played to keep you trapped in confusion and doubt no longer have any effect. You've grown beyond their reach. And the moment that happened, judgment became inevitable. Their downfall isn't a consequence of your suffering, it's a result of your transformation. It's a response to your elevation. They thought they could control you by keeping you in a state of uncertainty. But once you awakened to your true power, they were left with nothing but their own broken schemes. God didn't just protect you, He studied you. He didn't merely guard you from harm, He paid attention to your growth. There's a difference between being shielded and being observed, and heaven was carefully evaluating your every move. During the moments when no one was cheering you on, when you faced trials in silence, heaven took note. When you chose calm in the face of chaos, it wasn't weakness, it was spiritual strength. Your choices, your restraint, your silence in the face of adversity were all recorded as evidence of your readiness. God wasn't just counting your tears, He was measuring your maturity. He wasn't just shielding you from harm, He was observing how deeply you could be trusted with the blessings that were to come. Your resilience, your endurance, your ability to stay grounded when the world tried to shake you, these were your spiritual qualifications. And now, those qualifications are being acknowledged and celebrated. Your silent battles, the ones no one saw, the ones that left you exhausted but still standing, have all contributed to the divine record that is now unfolding in your favor. You weren't just protected from harm, you were observed, evaluated, and chosen for what's coming next. Heaven didn't just keep you alive, He kept you in a process of preparation. And now, those preparations are about to bear fruit. As for your enemies, they may have thought they were causing you harm, but all they were doing was unwittingly pushing you toward your divine destiny. Their actions, their words, their manipulations were nothing more than the fuel that has now ignited your rise. And as their judgment unfolds, it won't be because of your suffering, it will be because of the transformation you've undergone. You are no longer the person they tried to break. You are the person heaven always intended you to be, and that version of you is unstoppable. Your journey has never been about mere survival. It's been about your mastery over everything the enemy tried to throw at you. Now that you've grasped the very blueprint of resistance, you are entering a season where manipulation and deceit hold no power. The moment has arrived for your destiny to unfold rapidly, and the runway is clear. God has cleared the path for you to soar without turbulence. This is a time where even the slightest distraction could derail the momentum heaven has set in motion. The downfall of those who tried to hold you back isn't a victory over them, but a confirmation that their presence was incompatible with the elevation you've been called to. They were too slow for where you're headed, too chaotic for the world you're building, and too threatened by the identity you've now fully stepped into. The truth is, God saw that if He didn't remove them, they would have tried to reattach themselves to parts of you that no longer exist. They would have tried to pull you back into cycles you've already outgrown. This shift isn't just about your progress, it's about pace. The breakthrough that is unfolding for you is all about trajectory and alignment. Judgment is a necessary step for the environment to be right for the work that's about to be birthed through you. God is removing every voice that would have doubted you when speed was essential, every hand that would have interfered when precision was required. He is eliminating every presence that can't breathe in the altitude you're rising to. Your calling needs space to grow without friction, without resistance, and without unnecessary battles. Your next chapter doesn't involve fighting for ground. It's about occupying new ground faster than anyone can react. It won't require defending your identity. It will require stepping boldly into it with no resistance slowing your stride. This is why judgment is unfolding, not because of what they did to you, but because of what God is about to do times through times you. The opposition is being cleared because your acceleration is too great. Your elevation too high for distractions to linger. Their downfall isn't your triumph over their actions. It's God's way of showing you that what they tried to block, what they tried to interrupt, was already finished in the heavenly realms. They spent so much time plotting against you because they truly believed they could stop something fragile, something unfinished. What they didn't know is that your destiny was never under construction. It was unfolding according to God's divine plan. They assumed you were still vulnerable, still malleable, still unsure of who you were. But the truth is, God never starts something He hasn't already finished. Your life has been unfolding not in uncertainty but in revelation. You weren't chasing victory, you were walking in a path already declared victorious before you even took your first step. That's why their attacks never matched the outcome they expected. They were throwing stones at a building whose foundation was secured in heaven long before they ever took aim. They tried to block doors that God had already labeled as yours, to sabotage a path that had already been laid. They thought they were delaying you, but they were simply bumping up against a destiny that was already written long before they ever appeared. You can't be stopped because you're not creating your future. You're catching up to a future that has already been written. You're not fighting for victory. You're unveiling what God has already accomplished in realms they can't access or comprehend. That's why every setback became a setup for something greater. Every delay redirected you to the right path. Every obstacle was a reminder that you were being realigned with the destiny that had been prepared for you long before your enemies even launched their attacks. God allowed every battle because He needed to shape you, test your resilience, and document your spiritual growth. And now, as judgment falls upon your enemies, it's not just about their downfall, it's about your rise. You've been outgrowing the versions of yourself they tried to manipulate. You've been evolving in ways they couldn't understand. And now that you've stepped into the truth of who you are, they've lost the power they once held over you. They thought they were creating your downfall, but all they did was create your rise. This isn't just a season of defense, it's a season of divine authorship. God is rewriting the narrative they tried to craft for you. They tried to shape how the world saw you with lies and manipulation. But God is stepping in and crossing out every false word, every deceptive chapter, every misguided assumption. The story they wrote for you is now irrelevant. It's been replaced with the truth of who you truly are. And this truth will unfold publicly, for the world to see. Those who once tried to silence you will now witness your rise, and the very lies they spread will unravel under the weight of divine truth. You are not just being defended, you are being redefined. Heaven is not just protecting you, it's elevating you to a level where your enemies can no longer reach. The narrative that once confined you is now shattered. The script they wrote for you has been cancelled, and in its place, God is authoring a new chapter. a chapter where you take center stage, fully aware of your worth, your power, and your purpose. Your blessing is no longer delayed. It is already in motion, and every step you take forward is a testament to the divine intervention that has been orchestrated behind the scenes. The enemies who underestimated you, who plotted against you, who tried to break your spirit, they now face the undeniable truth that you were always destined for greatness. Your life is shifting publicly, and the world is about to witness the divine completion of what they tried so desperately to sabotage. You were never the victim of their schemes. You were always the victor, and now that victory is being revealed. Your destiny is unstoppable, and nothing, no power, no manipulation can change the course that God has set for you. As you move forward, you'll see that the battle wasn't just about overcoming them. It was about becoming who you were always meant to be. And now that you've awakened, nothing can stand in your way. Heaven is moving on your behalf, and the world is about to see the incredible unfolding of your divine purpose.